Chapter 8, Influence Tactics of Leaders by Logan Bowles, Kevin Bonsall, and Via James. Team members. Logan Bowles. He is currently a full-time student at TCC and will be pursuing a bachelor's degree in accounting in the future. He has been in the military, a project manager, and is currently working in school. His leadership philosophy is having a strong leader who is willing to take charge, but also having clear communication and trust with their employees. Via James. I am a part-time student, soon to be a full-time student at TCC. My plan is to get my associate's degree before I turn 18. I've just started working for my mother's company to get a look in on what her leadership is like. My leadership philosophy is to lead by setting clear goals, being trustworthy, and make progress over perfection. An overview. We will be discussing what influence is and why it is important, how power and influence affect and is used in leadership, the different types of tactics, which are ethical, neutral, and unethical, and finally, tactic sequencing. Leadership influence. Well, what is influence? Influence is having an impact on behaviors and attitudes and opinions of others. Tactics to influence others can include things like 1. Involving others. Maybe that means asking your employee, Jane, what her ideas are on the next project. 2. Connecting with them. Like actively listening to Jane when she tells you what her ideas are, and bringing those ideas up later to actually use them. 3. Inspiring them. Like showing belief in Jane's ideas and letting your confidence become a scaffold for hers. Lastly, fear is not the best option for influencing others. Controlling your employees and making them fear you might be the worst option for influencing others, but we'll delve deeper into that later. The importance of influence in leadership. Being a great leader means you need to influence, not control your employees. Influence can be broadly applied, but control only tends to work in specific situations. And even then, it has negative impacts. Influence builds stronger relationships compared to control, and often control can break those relationships down. Unlike control, influence has trust at the foundation of a relationship. As an example, if a boss were to control someone by micromanaging everything they do, it would breed resentment instead of trust. The boss would become someone that person fears instead of someone they want to be better for. So they end up doing the bare minimum. They also begin sugarcoating the bad news and hiding mistakes so they don't get punished for them. In the end, the boss has no info on how to make the company better, and an employee who only cares about doing what's necessary in order to go home. Power and influence in leadership. Being a positive influence means employee satisfaction and motivation can be improved. This means higher quality work and stronger retention and less absenteeism. It can also increase productivity, even if it was lacking beforehand. Motivated people work harder and work with purpose. Therefore, there's more output from the employees. Lastly, leaders can influence the development of future leaders. People start to feel safe enough to make mistakes, and safe enough to learn. They begin to start problem solving, and that creates more leaders. There are many benefits when it comes to being a positive influence. The question is, what are some skills and tactics that make a leader a positive influence? Influencing skills. There are several skills that a leader needs to influence effectively. A few of those are organizational intelligence and trust building. How are you going to be an effective leader if you don't know anything about your organization and your employees don't trust you? There's also self-promotion and promoting your team. Don't overshadow your team, though, by talking about yourself, but instead talk about how your team accomplished something and how you led them to that victory. Strategy and knowing when to use tactics is very important. Without strategy and the tactics and the skills to use that strategy, how will a company get anywhere? This begs the question, though, what are the proper and improper tactics to influence team members? Ethical tactics. It's important to discuss tactics when it comes to leadership. After all, what's a leader without their tactics? It's like asking a mechanic to fix your car without any tools. You'd come back to your car and it would probably end up worse than when you brought it there. That's why knowing the difference between ethical, unethical, and neutral tactics and how to responsibly use them is key for being a great leader. Ethical tactics include being honest, transparent, and respectful. A leader also needs to use facts and logic when they influence their employees, and ask their team members for ideas and ask questions to involve them. Well, why does this work? It builds trust and improves teamwork between the employees and the boss. It also promotes long-term commitment. Trust and commitment to the organization and boss are most important when it comes to building up a business. As we have seen, there are many good benefits to using ethical tactics to influence team members. But what happens when you use unethical ones? Well, the answer is lengthy, but absolutely true. Unethical tactics. Things like manipulation, humiliation, and pressure are harmful to an employee instead of beneficial. Using threats and demands to control your employee is another large, unethical tactic. Things like using fear to influence another's ideas and actions are super unbeneficial. Who wants to be controlled, ridiculed, pressured, and scared of their boss while they're trying to work? No one. People want to work in a positive environment. So if they don't get that in positive environment, they don't work. Or don't work well, at least. Using these methods lower employee morale faster than you think and leads to no trust between an employee and a boss. And like I said, trust is most important. Because a person is in such a hostile environment like that, they want to leave. But for those who need the job and don't have the ability to leave, they start to hate their job and their boss. And neither of those things are good for the organization. If your employee hates you and they can't leave, what do you think the outcomes are? A loss for the organization, a hurt employee, and a failure on your part. However, there is a gray area, though, between unethical and ethical tactics. Let's talk about that side of things. Neutral tactics. Neutral tactics aren't necessarily unethical, but it's not like they're ethical either. So they are definitely a gray area, depending on the person, though. One person may find a neutral tactic okay and be fine with it, but another might be offended or hurt by it. Some neutral tactics can include asking for help or favors based on friendship and loyalty. Now, this could sway towards favoritism or just a favor, which is why it's dependent upon the person. Trying to get support from others to persuade someone else could feel like a planned attack. Or maybe someone trying to get a little help to convince a friend. What would you think if a coworker brought up a bunch of your other coworkers in order to convince you to do something? Lastly, there is joking. It can be anything from joking about a recent win to joking about what a bad job a person is doing, even if they don't mean it. This can feel degrading or like just small talk. It's all about what a person considers it. As a leader, it's your job to make sure your tactics aren't hurting your employees, while also saving your energy where you can. The neutral approach can feel more political due to using different tactics, depending on the person or situation. Tactic sequencing. This method of tactic sequencing uses lower risk tactics at first, such as joking with another person. If the lower risk tactic doesn't work, that's when it's time to move to a higher level of risk tactic. You continue on in that cycle until you find something that sticks and works. It's best to use fully ethical tactics to build trust. Then you have the capability to move to neutral tactics, which cost a little less energy. Unethical tactics should always be avoided, as they can work in the moment for a problem, but will eventually cause damaging issues to the employee, the organization, and therefore the boss. They are called unethical for a reason, and doing them can lead to you having the name of an unethical leader. To put it into perspective, let's use a hypothetical situation. Say your employee, let's call her Jane again, just came onto your team. You don't know much about her, so you start with low-risk tactics. You ask for her input on a small decision and listen actively to understand her work style. It doesn't work though. You need to try a higher-risk tactic. So you delegate a meaningful project to her and publicly credit her expertise in a meeting. You find an ethical tactic that sticks and works. You've earned Jane's trust, and now you don't have to try so hard. You move on to some neutral tactics, like giving her autonomy on routine tasks and checking in periodically rather than hovering. However, one day you accidentally slip and try and control Jane. You tell her to redo her completed work your way without explaining why, dismissing her approach. Now she is hurt. You have to start over and regain your employees' trust. Influence in today's workforce. To be a leader, one should learn that more people are independent thinkers nowadays, comparatively to ever. That's why leaders need to be strong and have a purpose that they are passionate about. Having specific tactics helps structure the leader's approach and purpose. To influence those who are independently thinking, you need to be passionate. You must have a purpose and ways to achieve that purpose. Without it, your stance in the organization might easily crumble. When taking on the role of being a leader, you need to consider how people in the 21st century are and what they are thinking and how you need to change. Let's put this into a story again. Say you're leading a product team. You have a bold vision. Revolutionize how customers interact with your software. You're genuinely passionate about accessibility, and you believe this will change lives. You start by setting a clear goal and showing your team the impact they'll have on users who've been unable to work with the current interface designs. You involve them early, asking for their ideas on implementation rather than just telling them the solutions. As they contribute, you connect their work to their personal growth. You say things like, "This project will make you pioneers in inclusive design." You model the behavior you want to see. You admit when your first approach failed. One team member who was skeptical at first sees you're not just chasing metrics, but you genuinely care about your mission. Your passion becomes contagious. They start proposing innovations that you hadn't even considered. You've influenced them, not through authority, through your own purpose and respect for their independent thinking. The project succeeds because they wanted to, not because you forced it. Well, how do we apply it all? First, you need to determine the need for influencing your surroundings. You may ask, what does that mean? Well, it means that you need to understand how influence is needed and for who and when. Second, you need to think about your current skills versus what you need to acquire. A good leader has good skills and uses them, but a great leader, they find what they're not good at and work on it. Third, use those skills. Start off low risk, which gives low reward, and build on that experience. From there, you can figure out the weakness in yourself, in your team, and in your organizations. Fourth, look at people who have experienced similar things. Look at how they handled it and what their result was. Analyze what needs to be done better and what your personal organization needs. Fifth and last, apply the tactics needed to influence. You've learned what they are. Now, use them. Consider where you are strong and where you are lacking. Apply what you have and work on what you don't. This is what is necessary to influence and become a better leader.